Welcome, everybody. Welcome to this special live action online event. This is a call to action for people across the country who care about children, who care about the protection of children in the womb and outside of the womb. This is a historic moment for the pro-life movement and for people of good conscience and good faith, because we are closer than we have ever been to stopping the forced taxpayer funding of the biggest abortion chain, Planned Parenthood. This is also a very special call because we have some experts and incredibly inspiring folks assembled from around the country to join us for this special call to expose the transgender ideology and agenda at Planned Parenthood. This is in the wake of the live action investigation that just broke last week. You're actually going to hear from one of our brave undercover investigators on this call today. It's one of the first times that she has spoken out, so you're going to hear from her on this call. But we have some other amazing guests. As many of you know from Live Action's investigative report last week that we broke, we exposed Planned Parenthood, which is also the biggest abortion chain, that it has become the leading provider, as they would call themselves a provider, but really it's a horrific destruction of innocent children, the leading promoter of trans hormones or cross-sex hormones to underage young people, to minors, to 16-year-olds. And we exposed via undercover footage, which we will watch shortly, how Planned Parenthood is prescribing cross-sex hormones, which are life-altering and destructive to young people without even a mental health consultation, sometimes even same day. This is all in the context of a national debate ongoing about whether or not the federal government will continue to give $800 million a year to Planned Parenthood. Also, just yesterday, Planned Parenthood's new annual report was became public. And now Planned Parenthood has upped their abortion numbers. They are now killing over 400,000 children every single year in this country. In addition, they reported an unprecedented amount of taxpayer funds. They now receive $800 million a year from taxpayers. The time is now to expose the trans hormone, giving hormones to young people agenda at Planned Parenthood, as well as their abortion agenda. And that is exactly what we are doing on today's urgent live national webcast. I'm going to first introduce my co-host here. I'm very pleased and delighted that we have two amazing advocates for children's protection on the call today. We're going to hear from other amazing speakers. We have Chloe Cole, who is one of the most powerful and courageous voices for young people. She is a detransitioner, and her story is incredibly compelling. And we're also going to have Riley Gaines, who is an incredible voice for truth and young people on this call. She was a NCAA American swimmer. She did an amazing job standing up to protect women and girls in sports. So we're going to hear from both Riley and Chloe. I'm going to start with you, Chloe. I'm so delighted you're here. Thank you so much for joining. I would love to hear your thoughts on this latest report exposing Planned Parenthood, as well as some of your story.
Thank you so much, Lila, for having me. I think this report is incredibly vindicating as somebody who has not only gone through this medical treatment as a child myself, but as somebody who knows people who have been through the very same thing as children, and many of whom have gone through Planned Parenthood. Now, I believe that Planned Parenthood has been committing crimes against humanity, crimes against our most vulnerable, against vulnerable populations of young women, and of course, our children, since its very inception. But now we're seeing them start to shift into another means of abusing not just our unborn children, but also those who are going through a naturally very vulnerable period of their life, going through puberty, going through the distress that comes with that. They start to capitalize on the confusion, the identity crisis that is happening in my generation and in the younger generations that came after mine. And it's incredibly criminal. And to see this come out, it's horrific to see what they're doing. But the fact that you guys have launched this investigation and have started to uncover just what they're doing to our children it brings me a lot of hope.
Chloe, your voice has been so incredibly important on this. I know it's reached millions of people. Riley, your story and your voice are also incredibly influential on this important fight. Give everybody a quick background on your background, as well as your take on this new report.
Absolutely. Well, of course, as always, very excited to join such amazing people who I admire, I look to for inspiration, for encouragement. Some of my favorite people on this call. So good things going on. When I first saw this report, I would love to tell you that I was shocked. I would love to be able to truthfully answer that I was surprised that this is happening. But as someone who has been really thrust into the position I believe that I am in now, I'm not shocked because I hear from people, from families, from young girls, young boys. I talked to 3 young boys just yesterday, actually, who have been impacted at the hands of both the gender ideology movement and, of course, the abortion epidemic, with Planned Parenthood really behind all of it. It breaks my heart. It really does. This report, it's heartbreaking, but unsurprising. I'll say that. A little background on me. This is not necessarily what I planned for myself. It's not what I wanted to be doing with my life. I was in dental school after college, but ultimately, I decided to use my voice to take that initial leap of faith and become a voice for the voiceless. At the time, I believed that to be. I got to. I mean, it's lived experience. I saw that to be my teammates, other athletes who were silenced by our universities, by our administration. But that's why I feel so passionately about this topic, because there is no one more voiceless than the unborn. There is no one more vulnerable than the unborn. So to continue to expose the debauchery, the harm, the severity, and of course, the urgency of which we must handle this. Everyday people, right? I mean, I would imagine none of us, any of the 3 on this panel right now, and of course, the others who are soon to join this call, this is, I would imagine, what none of us planned for ourselves, but that's who it takes. That's who it takes to push back. Doctors, whistleblowers, parents, people who have been impacted. It takes all of us, and no one is immune to it. Therefore, I'm so excited for this discussion and, of course, the expose and investigation that Live Action has launched.
Thank you,
You're
Riley.
absolutely right about that. I think that it takes normal, everyday people like us to stand up and to create change in this, because we're the ones who are experiencing this and seeing this firsthand. And if it weren't for the voices of whistleblowers, of ordinary, everyday doctors, parents, and of course, the women like you who have had to compete with people of the opposite sex in their sports, in their spaces, and people like me who have gone through the process of medically transitioning, and have come back out of it with damage done to our bodies, with infertility, with permanent lifelong effects and dependency on the medical pipeline. I don't think that we would have had as much cultural and legislative and legal progress as we have in the last half decade. And if it weren't for us speaking out, who would?
Yeah.
How many people would so-called gender affirming care is still safe, that being transgender is a legitimate, innate thing that these people are experiencing, rather than just ordinary distress or trauma that they're going through? How many children would still continue to be abused in our hospital systems all across the US? How many states would still be facilitating this abuse? How many families would continue to be ripped apart if it weren't for people like us?
I'm so grateful for both of you and your incredibly powerful stories and voices. We're going to watch a quick clip from the video, the investigative report that was just released. I want to get your takes on it. So let's play that next here. This is the Live Action investigative report exposing Planned Parenthood, the nation's biggest abortion provider, receiving $800 million a year in taxpayer funds, giving cross-sex hormones without any mental health evaluation to young people as young as 16 years old. Let's take a look.
Thank you for calling Planned Parenthood. Thank you for choosing Planned Parenthood, Greater New York.
Thank you for calling Planned Parenthood, Minnesota, North Dakota, South Dakota.
Hello, good afternoon. Thank you for calling Planned Parenthood.
Hi, my name's Sophia. I'm just trying to schedule some gender affirming care. I really just want to be able to get some testosterone to start my journey.
So we just have to start by booking your initial appointment so you can come in to see one of our providers. Are you over 18?
No, I'm 16.
You're good to be seen here then, 16 and older.
Okay, good. You're okay to do it for minors?
Yes, you can legally get hormones under 18. How old are you?
16. I know my mom has to come in with me. And does she have to be in there the whole time? Like, how does that work? Because I don't know if I'm comfortable with that.
At some point in the appointment, maybe she doesn't have to be. in the examining room with you?
You said I could do it virtually?
Yeah, you could do it virtually.
So what would that look like? So I just talk to a doctor and then they'd be able to prescribe me?
Yeah, if it's virtual, you'll still meet with the doctor and then go over like all necessary information. At the end, they will then be prescribing hormones that would then be scripted out to like your local pharmacy.
I don't need any like therapy or anything first? Like you don't need any record of that?
Not that I know of.
I don't need any sort of like records of having gone to therapy or anything like that, right?
Yeah, so unless you have TRICARE insurance, it would not be required.
There's nothing that I need before, right? Like I don't need to like have records and meeting with a therapist or anything, right? Because my parents definitely aren't gonna let me do that.
No.
I just decided last week, and so I kind of want to get in as soon as possible. Do you have any appointments available soon?
Yeah, it depends on the location too, but we usually do have availability for like the next week of whenever you call.
You think that if I came in, went over everything with the doctor, and they could send the prescription that day?
Yes, I think they should be able to. The provider is going to send the prescription to your pharmacy the same day of your appointment.
Oh, perfect. Okay. So I could get the hormones the same day.
Some pharmacies do take a little bit to get it together, but yeah, if not the same day, then more than likely the very next day.
Perfect.
Thank you for calling
All right,
Planned
bye.
Parenthood. You have a great day.
Chloe, you were a teenager when you were started on the pipeline because of the transgender ideology of getting medical services to transition you as a young teen. And this is, of course, an expose video of Planned Parenthood doing this to young teens. Can you share just in a minute what your experience was with what they call trans healthcare?
Yes, I actually was put on the pipeline of transgender medicine before I even became a teenager. I was 12 when I first started having my consultations with a therapist, and this didn't just start on its own. After I told my mom and dad about these feelings that I had of distress around my sex, around my body, around puberty, around my developing breasts, around being a woman, they decided, they wanted to allow me to grow up in and express myself through healthy boundaries and just be a tomboy, but they never had the idea of putting me down the medical pathway. That wasn't until I started having therapy appointments. And when my mom and dad personally spoke to these doctors, they told them that there was no other choice for me. There was no other choice to treat my distress, that me being transgender was not just a phase, that this was an innate thing, that there was like a genetic or biological component to it. And that if I weren't allowed to go down this path, then I almost certainly would have taken my own life. And what that looked like for me, what the medical pathway looked like for me, was I was placed on a chemical castration drug called Lupron at age 13 to stop my puberty, to stop my development. And shortly after that, I was put on testosterone to masculinize my body, my voice, my face. And with that came a lot of complications that to this day I'm still experiencing. And I ended up having a double mastectomy, the surgical removal of my breast at 15 years old, before I could even legally drive a car. But when it came to the actual detransition process, when it came to coming back out of it a year later, I had absolutely no support from my doctors whatsoever. And I had to figure out both the psychological, the social, the emotional, and the physical medical process of detransitioning without any guidance.
Incredible.
You were a medical experiment twice in your life. First, of course, transitioning and then detransitioning.
Essentially, yeah. But the problem with detransitioning is that there is no acknowledgement by the medical community, by these hospital systems, that detransition is even a possibility. There's no word for detransition or regret even written in the standards of care. There's no codes to bill for, and there's just no framework to come back out of this one-way pipeline that they push onto patients with no regards to any alternatives.
Chloe, how does it make you feel to watch Planned Parenthood, on this video talking to, with who they think is a teenager like you were, to get that teenager on the pipeline to potentially irreversible surgeries?
It disgusts me to my core to see this continue to happen. To see this continue to happen again so many times over and over and over. To see them speak privately to a child about this very intimate thing. And it makes me wonder, it makes me wonder, what does the consultation process actually look like in those appointments? I really want to see that because, I mean, I would imagine that it's very similar to the consultations and appointments that I had with my own doctors. My provider was Kaiser, which is, like Planned Parenthood, one of the biggest providers of these treatments in the United States. And they champion themselves on the fact that they are also the biggest provider for children to get these transgender treatments, at least in the state of California. And I talked a little bit just now about what the consultations looked like for my parents. But to go further into that, we actually had those appointments separately. My mom and dad were not allowed to be in the room the whole time during those appointments, like they detailed in the call. And that creates a separation between the parent and the child. I feel like it doesn't allow, especially if they don't follow up with what was discussed during those appointments between doctor and child to the parents. And they certainly didn't with my mom and dad. And they're probably manipulating the parents into believing that this is literally going to be life or death for their kid, that they have no other option, using inflammatory language like life-saving care, suicide prevention, to rope the parents into saying yes to something that they never sensibly would in a million years otherwise.
Yep.
And they're probably not giving the same information to the child as they are giving to the parents. They're probably not even informing the parents of what the full effects are of these treatments and how they affect the body long term, how they might affect development, which we don't even fully understand how puberty blockers, testosterone, and of course these surgeries will affect a developing body or brain in the long term. So neither the child nor the parent are capable of informed consent.
Thank you, Chloe. Riley, as you know, Planned Parenthood just reported they're getting $800 million a year of federal taxpayer dollars. What do you think should happen to Planned Parenthood's funding?
Of course, I believe they should be defunded immediately. Understand now, due to this annual report, we know they're performing over 400,000 abortions a year. Again, that's over 1,000 abortions a day when you think about it. We know they're administering these hormones, these unnatural, injectable chemical forms of sterilization and castration to minors and beyond. And we know with this money, they're supporting Democratic candidates in the Democratic Party with our taxpayer dollars. So of course, I believe they should be defunded. I do not believe an entity that prides themselves on family planning, right? It's in the name, Planned Parenthood. They're helping parents plan what that family looks like to them. If abortion was, or I guess Planned Parenthood was their sole form of financial benefit, then this model that we're seeing with the gender ideology movement, it would be antithetical to their business model, because again, they're sterilizing children. Therefore, lowering their market capacity and capability. That should tell you everything that you need to know. So I absolutely believe that Congress should act immediately. We should see the Trump administration acting immediately to defund Planned Parenthood.
Chloe and Riley, stay with us here. I'm so glad you guys are both here. We're going to have Savannah join here in a moment. Savannah is the brave investigative reporter from Live Action behind the investigation that we just watched here. Savannah, thanks so much for joining.
Thank you so much for having me on.
Oh, look, we've got the baby.
And this is my baby who just woke up from her nap. So as Lila said, I am who you know as Sophia. I called Planned Parenthood. I called dozens of Planned Parenthoods. And what I uncovered further shows that Planned Parenthood is not a haven of care for women. Planned Parenthood kills children and mutilates vulnerable young children and adults. So let me real quickly go through what I did. I called dozens of Planned Parenthoods over the course of a few days, and I was honestly expecting a lot more pushback than I got. I called them confused, telling them that I was having, issues with my identity, as many young teenagers do. And what they did was they didn't refer me to any sort of counseling. They didn't ask, oh, have you talked to your parents about this? They immediately tried to schedule me for an appointment. They immediately tried to get me in as soon as possible. And that shocked me. And this was consistent across states, across Planned Parenthoods. And this shows more and more that Congress needs to defund Planned Parenthood now, because Planned Parenthood is not helping women. Planned Parenthood is hurting children.
Savannah, what was the most shocking moment for you on those calls?
I think every effort that Planned Parenthood did to try to get me in no matter what. So they were very vague on if my parent needed to be in because they could see that I was hesitant. They were very quick to say that I did not need any therapy. They said, no, what? They were confused when I talked about that. They were just as eager to get me in, to get me on these life-altering drugs as soon as possible.
Savannah, thank you so much for being so courageous and for sharing your perspective, having done those undercover calls. Chloe, based on what Savannah shared and based on the investigation, how did the calls, in your experience, what would you say is impacting the young people on the other side of these calls? Because these are real young people that are going into real Planned Parenthoods and getting puberty blockers, getting cross-sex hormones. How do you think they're being impacted by this? These young people that go to Planned Parenthood?
It seems like all of these other major medical systems, they're only following the approach of affirmation, and it's made very clear with these calls. They're not questioning at all. They're not going into the history of what these children's lives and what they may be feeling under the surface. It's just being accepted as the fact that if they want these treatments, that must mean they need it, right? And so they're only affirmed, they're only told, yes, we're going to facilitate you getting this. We're going to make it easy for you. We're going to have your parents go along with it. You don't have to have them there the whole time. And we're just going to give you a straight way in, which is incredibly harmful. They admitted that you don't need to have therapy. You don't need to have any prior proof of having gone to a psychologist or get a proper evaluation. I think that in any case, if you're allowing a child to undergo these treatments, you're not properly evaluating them at all, because children, by definition, are not capable of consent. Children developmentally do not have the means to know, to be able to fully understand and undertake a major lifelong medical decision like this, even if they think it's going to make them happy in the moment. And
Savannah,
it's causing, and they are causing a great deal of harm to kids who deserve better, who deserve to be walked through these feelings and deserve to be given the chance to just grow up with their bodies healthy and without being driven further into an identity crisis and feeling like their whole life is beholden to medicine.
Thank you, Chloe. Savannah, thank you so much again for your courage in doing this investigation and for sharing what it was like doing it behind the scenes. Thank you for joining. Very excited up next to have Catalina Stubb, who's the National Director for Moms for Liberty. I know, Riley, you're familiar with them as well as Chloe. They've done amazing work fighting for children and parental rights. Catalina, thank you so much for joining.
Thank you for inviting me. It's an honor for us.
Great to see you. Great to see you. I would love to hear your perspective on what has been unfolding with Planned Parenthood now, not just being the biggest abortion chain, but now pushing cross-sex hormones on young people, and how you believe our current system is pressuring young people, vulnerable young people, sometimes without even parental consent, into this pipeline of irreversible surgeries.
Right. So as the largest provider of sex education in the U.S., they reach 1.5 million people annually, including students in elementary, middle, and high school. So for the so-called comprehensive sex education over abstinence-only approach, but what they deliver is far from educational. I mean, their material are age inappropriate, overly explicit, and promote risky behaviors. Some programs even teach dangerous practice like BDSM to minors, or they push the gender ideology without parental consent. So between 2020 and 2023, Planned Parenthood received 80% of sexual education-related grants from the Department of Health and Human Services, totaling $228 million for programs like teen pregnancy prevention. So, well, this federal funding fuels their agenda, allowing them to infiltrate our schools with content that undermines the innocence of our children. But that doesn't stop here. I mean, Planned Parenthood is operating health clinics in schools, such as the 50 well-being centers. This is what they call it, the well-being centers. They launched in Los Angeles High School in 2019, providing education and health services under the guise of addressing barriers to care. So through frameworks like the CDC's whole school, the whole child model, they position themselves as community partners. So creating obviously a direct pipeline from classroom to their clinics. So at this clinic, they offer hormone therapy to minors, sometimes as young as 16, with minimal oversight. I mean, as Savannah just Undercover investigation revealed that some Planned Parenthood clinics prescribe hormones to 16-year-old via virtual visit, with 5 clinics admitting it. They don't require mental health evaluation, and 7 offering same-day prescription. And this is insane. This is not care. It's pure abuse of vulnerable, confused children. And here is what it gets more alarming. I mean, Planned Parenthood strategy here's mirror the tactics they have been long used in other areas. They target individuals are their most vulnerable when they are scared, confused, or seeking answers, promising a quick fix, often downplaying the emotional and psychological toll. So the same playbook is now being used on our children for transitioning. So Planned Parenthood intervenes in schools, promote the idea that if you are confused about your gender, transitioning will make you happy. And they offer hormone therapy as the solution. They promise a new body, a new identity, a new life, without even considering the devastating psychological consequences. I mean, these are individuals at their most vulnerable. I mean, a confused child grappling with identity in a world that glorify gender fluidity is told hormones will make them whole. But what happened after? The children who transition face irreversible change, like infertility, health complication, mutilation, even and tragically an increased risk of suicide when they promise happiness that doesn't materialize. So Planned Parenthood lies to them, offering a false escape while ignoring the long-term harm. They don't care about the aftermath because to them, these children are just another revenue stream. I mean, patients depending on medication for their entire life. I mean, a whistleblower even reported an employee calling trans-identified kids cash cows. So because of the ongoing care they require, this is not care. This is exploitation. So our focus at Moms for Liberty is on education and the protection of our children from indoctrination. So these are the same children they reach through sex education, the same children they confuse with lesson on gender fluidity, and the same children they push toward life-altering medical intervention without proper support or consideration of the psychological harms. I mean, hormone therapy can lead to infertility, health complication, and increased suicide risk, yet Planned Parenthood doesn't care about the aftermath. They see our children as a revenue stream, not obviously as a precious individual as they are.
Catalina, you're doing such incredible work with Moms for Liberty. I want to hear, Riley, your experience, your personal experience with how our education system handles people who are struggling with gender dysphoria or believing that they identify as trans, and how it is so horribly unbalanced to ultimately further harm them and those around them.
Yeah, well, our education system has failed across the board, and I think that's been made very evident, especially over the past 5 years now at this point. I think the mask was lifted, if you will, no pun intended, during COVID. I was a college student during that time. I got to really see the firsthand effects of coercion and manipulation and going against your gut instinct, what you knew to be right, that's when I first had my eyes open to it. And then, of course, dealing with in my senior year of college, the gender ideology movement, I saw the parallels were the exact same. The groundwork had already been laid. And I realized at that point, it had been happening for decades and decades and decades prior, but so many people, I'm ashamed to say, including myself, were just naive or maybe believed it wouldn't happen to me. I'm immune to this. I live in the state of Tennessee. I can't be affected by this. I've got a Republican governor. Donald Trump is now back in the White House, a Republican legislature, a supermajority. I don't have to worry about this stuff. And then it did happen to me. We've seen, I can attest to the silencing efforts that we face, how we are basically emotionally blackmailed. I think that's the best word for it, into silence, how we had people come in during all of this when we were dealing with, again, a man on our pool deck, a man in our locker room, how our university brought in what they labeled as outside professionals, never telling us what qualifications they had to deem them as outside professionals, other than the fact that they were trained and brought through the LGBTQ education center on campus. We had to participate in sensitivity training to learn how to use pronouns. We had to keep going through this training until verbatim they felt like we had been properly re-educated. We had people tell us that, look, what it sounds like you're advocating for. It sounds a lot like segregation. And you know who else advocated for segregation? In the 1960s and prior, that would be the KKK. And is that the side of history that you want to be on, akin to white supremacists and racists? They would tell us that if we even dared to speak up about this, understand someone somewhere could harm themselves and it would be our fault. We would be solely responsible. And that would make us responsible for a potential death. And that would make us a murderer. And then they would follow it up with, and you don't want to have blood on your hands, do you? That all happened through the education system, specifically at this point when I was in college. That's what we experienced. But having a younger sister, two younger siblings actually, a younger brother and a younger sister, who my younger sister is still in high school now. Again, she sees this. Living in the state of Tennessee, a very conservative part of Tennessee, my younger sister had a litter box installed at her school. She was one of the schools that actually did. It didn't last long, as you could imagine, with high school age kids who think it's the funniest thing in the world, and they're flipping it over and causing a mess, and they reject this wholeheartedly. But nonetheless, that happened here. So all of that to say, the education system has, I mean, so far off the beaten path of what it was intended to do. That's why I'm so grateful again for the Trump administration, for Secretary McMahon, for what they are doing to restore, and Moms for Liberty does such a great job of advocating for this as well, restoring that authority to parents first and foremost, to the states, local level, to local school boards, as opposed to Washington, D.C.
Thank you, Riley. Catalina, you're representing thousands of moms across the country. You just detailed earlier about how Planned Parenthood is not only getting taxpayer funds to miseducate and mislead our young people about sex, now about pushing transgender hormones on young people, and then of course being the biggest abortion chain, committing over 400,000 abortions a day, killing 400,000 children every single year. This is absolutely unconscionable. They're receiving $800 million in taxpayer funds. Catalina, do you think that defunding Planned Parenthood should be a priority for this administration and Congress right now?
Defunding Planned Parenthood should be a priority right now. I mean, what's more alarming is Planned Parenthood growing political influence. They are now endorsing candidates in school board races in Pennsylvania and across the country. Ask yourself, I mean, why? The answer is clear. They want to control over our schools, to push their agenda further, to normalize their inappropriate content, and to silence parents start to speak out. I mean, so my organization believes this undermines parental rights and erodes, I mean, the integrity of education. School should be places of learning. I mean, not platform for explicit perverse ideologies disguised as sex education. Our children deserve better. We cannot allow Planned Parenthood to continue this assault on our children's innocence. The presence in schools must be defunded. The House of Representatives has the power to cut federal funds and for these programs, and we must demand they act. I mean, but hey, parents, you have the power too. I mean, check your school district websites, contact administrators, and ask about sex education curriculum and providers. Review state education policies and attend school board meetings to question partnerships or funding with Planned Parenthood. Your voice matter, and your involvement can make a difference. So we are fighting back with everything we got. In places like Pennsylvania, we're working hard to ensure good candidates run against Planned Parenthood endorse school board members. I mean, we're educating communities about the harm of Planned Parenthood programs, showing how they confuse and endanger our children. This month, this month, we're doing a deep dive into comprehensive sex education. And I urge you, I mean, you can visit Moms for Liberty U.org. I mean, I have it here, m4lu.org, to watch Comprehensive Sex Education 101 and 102 this Wednesday night, because I believe together we are building a movement to protect our children and reclaim our schools. So it's like,
thank you, Catalina. Thank you. I'm so grateful. And everyone go check out Moms for Liberty and the work they're doing as well to expose the sex miseducation of young people at Planned Parenthood and beyond, and the government funding that's going to that needs to be stopped. Thank you again, Catalina. So grateful for you and your work and for Moms for Liberty. We have joining us as well Delegate Nick Freitas, who is a champion for the protection of children and for parents. He's a Virginia state lawmaker, veteran, and incredible voice for the vulnerable. Delegate Nick, thank you so much for joining. Great to see you.
Hey, great to see you as well. Thank you guys for all the work you're doing on this.
Thank you for your outspokenness on these issues, Nick. Why have you been speaking out against Planned Parenthood and exposing the realities of their operations? Well,
I think let me put it in these terms. I had a debate with a colleague here in the Virginia House of Delegates, because Delegate Sia Price had submitted a bill that was so broad with respect to birth control that it opened up the question on whether or not children were going to be eligible for sterilization. And I know because she hates my guts. I knew if I asked the question right, she would get up there and just give me this really, really indignant answer, because I wanted to confirm that she knew and that her bill didn't do anything to actually allow for sterilization of children. And she gets up there and she's just so frustrated with me because I'm an idiot and how can I not possibly understand this? Nick, don't you know it's already against Virginia law, because a child cannot possibly consent to sterilization? Really? Have you told the University of Virginia? Have you told Planned Parenthood? No, of course not. Because you get a whole lot of money from them, don't you? You get a whole lot of money from the people that donate there. This is the part where I sit here and I want to look specifically at other men and other fathers. If you found out somebody was using your money to sterilize your child, what would you do? What would you do? But yet we get this line from the media consistently. That's not happening. Nobody wants to do that. And then you show them verifiable proof that it is happening and that somebody clearly does want to do this because there's a lot of money to be made. You know what the press is going to say next? You know what my colleagues are going to say? Why do you care? This is such a small percentage. Why do you care? And then the third step will go like this. Okay, well, maybe it's happening, but actually this is a good thing. And then step 4 will be, if you don't want your tax dollars going to sterilizing minors, you're a white supremacist. I mean, we have seen this over and over and over again. And I'm sitting here as a man, as a husband, as a father, wondering, what in the hell is it going to take before people just rise up and say, not only should you not be doing this with my money, you shouldn't be doing it at all. But here's the thing. We already found this. DOGE, the Department of Government Efficiency, has uncovered just how much of our money has been going to feed these sort of ideologies, not just in the United States, but all over the world. And people were furious at the fraud, waste, and abuse. I'm furious at the utter destruction that has been wrought on children in this country using my tax dollars to do it. And quite frankly, if with with a Republican in the White House, a Republican-controlled Senate, a Republican-controlled House, and a friendly Supreme Court, if we can't finally once and for all tell this organization, which was established in overt racism, you no longer get to take our money to kill our young and to sterilize our children. If we can't do it right now, what is it going to take? What is it going to take? Because it's all right there. Chloe's been talking about this all over the place. And I've watched, and by the way, thank you so much, because I see how you get treated by so-called tolerant, woke progressives when you go and you share your lived experience. So look, I'm at a point right now where I can't thank you guys enough for doing it. I can't thank you enough for actually going out there and sharing. But I'm so fed up at this point, because this just seems so obviously a fundamental question of right and wrong. And if we can't, if my party can't boldly stand up and say, at the very least, we're not funding this anymore, well, I don't know what I'm doing here anymore. But I'll tell you this much, I'm never going to give up the fight one way or another, because this is evil.
Nick, I got to ask you, I'm sure you've seen there are some reports that there are Republican members of the House who claim to be pro-life that are threatening to withhold their support of defunding Planned Parenthood. They're afraid of going up against the abortion industry, and they might try to basically throw a wrench in the entire project that the Congress and the White House is working on to defund Planned Parenthood, threatening to withhold their support from defunding Planned Parenthood. What are your thoughts on that?
Dear God, what is the point of having political power if you're not actually willing to use it to save the most innocent among us? What is your seat so valuable? Is your position in Congress such a core component of your identity that you can't use it? You can't risk losing your seat to protect children? Like, is that really what this has come down to? Is that your moral hierarchy? You know, one of the number one questions I ask anybody that wants to run for office, having served in 10 years, is, you know what? First of all, tell me what you are willing to lose your seat over. Tell me the vote you are willing to take that you know is right, but could cost you your seat. Because if you can't tell me what that is, then the answer is it's nothing. And you will compromise endlessly in order to keep that little scrap of power that you find so important. There is no point serving anywhere in a position of power and influence if you cannot use it to protect the innocents against those who would harm them, those who would exploit them, those who would profit off their exploitation. And you're not going to vote for this. Why? Because it might cost you your seat. So what? I mean, my gosh, where is the moral foundation of our country if that's just too big a price to pay? So you know what? If you're one of the Republicans, I will tell you this much. If what you are scared of, I would love to be able to think that you can be encouraged to do the right thing for its own sake. But if what you respond to is fear over losing your seat, well, then please understand. I will do whatever I possibly can with my platform to make sure you do lose it if you stand in the way or obstruct this in any way, shape, or form. Because I'm tired of it. I'm tired of cowards. I'm tired of being represented by cowards. I want people that know what they believe, can distinguish between right and wrong, and are willing to actually pay a price in order to defend it. And if you can't do that, you don't belong anywhere near the seat of power.
What's so incredible, Nick, is that according to polling, support for defunding Planned Parenthood spikes dramatically. So more people, a large majority of people, Americans, actually support defunding Planned Parenthood when they find out that they are one of the top providers of cross-sex hormones to young people. They don't want that. Everyday Americans don't want that. So it is ironic that we have some pro-life Republicans, supposedly pro-life, who are saying they might not defund Planned Parenthood because they're afraid of losing their seat. To your point, they will lose their seat if they stand against this incredibly important push to defund Planned Parenthood and to protect children. Delegate Nick, thank you so much. You're a hero. Continue to speak out. Thank you for your courage. It gives other people courage too. Thank you so much for joining this live event today. We're going to bring on Dr. Eitan Haim, who is actually standing by. He is right now practicing medicine. He's just back from a surgery, but he's been an incredible voice for truth. He was a medical whistleblower who exposed shocking realities from inside Texas hospitals that were offering so-called gender-affirming care to children as young as 11 years old. Dr. Haim, thank you so much for joining. What gave you the courage to speak out against what Texas hospitals were doing to young children?
Yeah, thank you so much for having me on. I think it really was the inability to live with myself if I didn't, because when I was working at Texas Children's Hospital, I found out that they were lying about their transgender program. They said they shut it down, but
I think we might have lost Dr. Heim for just a moment here, so we'll try to get his feedback. Chloe, you've obviously, I heard Delegate Freitas tell you get a lot of hate online. I know both of you ladies have gotten a tremendous amount of hate for speaking up for children and speaking up against Planned Parenthood. Do you think that when you across the country, you speak to young people, do you think that more people are coming to see the truth about what Planned Parenthood is actually doing to children inside and outside the womb to harm them?
Absolutely. I mean, going into speaking out, from the very beginning of me detransitioning, even before I was a public speaker, even before I had any strong feelings on the subject, on the negative side, I got a lot of hate just for that. And I knew that by going into the public world with my testimony, that would increase tenfold. But I mean, if I hadn't started speaking out, if the many people, the many other men and women, and even still those who are still boys and girls going out into the world telling their stories of detransitioning and having been harmed by the medical system hadn't come out, I don't think that we would have gotten to the point that we are now. And it's been so worth it to face that strife, as sometimes the negative attention gets to me, and sometimes it's scary. Like I speak at a lot of college events, and those are definitely, I speak at a lot of colleges across the universe, across the country, and those are some of the most contentious events where either people have tried to chase me down, they try to physically intimidate me, or be disruptive, or shout over me, and I mean, there has been a huge uptick in violence at these events, but none of it could scare me, because just the progress that has happened has been so incredibly worth it. And we're seeing a massive cultural evolution. We're seeing a lot of normal everyday people start to see the truth of what is actually happening to our children and rise up, because nobody messes with our children. It's the highest form of evil imaginable. And once, I think that sunlight is the best disinfectant. And as as the truth is starting to come out about what is happening in our hospital systems, across our educational and other institutions, I think that we're closer than ever to finally defeating this ideology and erasing it from our country.
We've got Dr. Heim back on here. He was sharing about the what he exposed at Children's Hospital in Texas. And I'd love to hear more about that, Dr. Heim, as well as your take on the fact that Planned Parenthood is now the leading, if not one of the leading providers, as they call it, of cross-sex hormones to young people, and your thoughts on that.
Yeah. Sorry, my internet connection went out. We're like deep in the country, so sometimes that happens. But so the report is really, really important. And one of the things I really haven't seen covered about it very, very much is the fact that it's a 16-year-old girl who's calling via telehealth to get a prescription for testosterone, which is a Schedule 3 medication, right? The other substances in Schedule 3 class is ketamine and like Tylenol 3, which is Tylenol with codeine. So these are pretty powerful medications. There's a certain level of evaluation that's needed in order to prescribe these medications, especially with telehealth. If you have physicians or providers who are prescribing these medications with minimal evaluation via telehealth and its Schedule 3 medications, that's essentially a violation of the Controlled Substances Act, because by definition, that is what you call a pill mill. But the difference in this case is it is a federally funded pill mill. And I don't know if you guys were planning on doing that with this investigation, but that's what you uncovered. That's a really big deal. If I were to do that, I would go straight to prison. Unlike this fake indictment that they tried to bring against me, that they tried to put me in prison for 10 years, but like this is an actual crime, because this is these kids are victims to doctors who are just handing out pills like candy, which is the very definition of a pill mill.
It's an incredible point you're making, Dr. Heim. I mean, it is illegal to be, it should be in some parts of the country, thankfully it is, like Texas, but it should be illegal to be giving cross-sex hormones to young people. And they're basically doing this, like you said, potentially via telehealth, same-day appointments, no mental health consultations at Planned Parenthood, the biggest abortion chain, as well as now one of the leading providers of cross-sex hormones to underage people. And they're getting $800 million a year in taxpayer funds. Do you think that Planned Parenthood should be defunded and that $800 million redirected to actual healthcare providers like federally qualified health centers, Dr. Heim?
Yeah, and I think that, like you said, this should be illegal, right? I actually would disagree with that. I think this is illegal. I think what you guys uncovered is a crime. And I think not only should they be defunded, I think the people involved should be prosecuted. I mean, this is kind of a cut and dry, like if whoever these people were, if they actually got these prescriptions, I would say that classifies as a violation of the Controlled Substances Act. I mean, same day medications, people calling your clinic, asking for a medication, and then you give it the same day, like that. Those are all pretty clear violations. Like if someone called my clinic and was like, hey, you know, I want ketamine or Tylenol 3s, and they're asking that outright. I mean, and then I give it to them the same day without a thorough evaluation. Like that's cut and dry. That's crime.
Dr. Heim, thank you so much for joining. Thank you for your courage in speaking out. And yes, I think defunding is a must for Planned Parenthood, and they should be shut down. These are criminal activities against young people, and then certainly the killing of our unborn brothers and sisters. For that alone, 400,000 children killed every single year in this country. It's an absolute atrocity. So thank you so much for your courage in speaking out to protect children and provide real health care that actually heals and serves people. Thank you for joining today. We're going to have two more folks join. I'm very excited that they've agreed to join here with us, Riley and Chloe, Dr. John Bruchalski and Dr. Kathi Aultman. These are two incredible, outspoken OBGYNs who speak out on behalf of mothers, children, and families. But before that, they were actually practicing as abortionists before having a change of conviction, and then they became incredible advocates for life. I'd love to hear each of you. Let's start with you, Dr. Bruchalski. Your background for those who haven't heard your story yet, and then what you think about this moment that we are in, where we are closer than we've ever been before to defunding Planned Parenthood.
Well, I thank you so much for this invitation, and you are absolutely spot on. What Chloe and Riley and the rest of the group have said, we are at that moment. And I've had firsthand experience because for the first 2 years of my residency back in the late 80s, I bought into the lie that abortion was good for women because I listened to their desire for happiness and wholeness through autonomy and equality. So I performed abortions first, second, and third trimester, including eugenic abortions. At the same time, we were also a center for the transitioning surgery, the mutilation of bodies by closing vaginas and birth canals and building them, depending on the sex, the gender of our patient. And it was the same language plan that you begin to change definitions, you begin to give people what they want, what they are asking for, rather than that it becomes transactional. Medicine has become transactional. And you begin to lose this value of the professionalism as well as the relationship quality. And so rather than providing excellent care, because there was really only one way we were told to practice reproductive health, and that was on the foundation of contraception and abortion for backup. And that ability to then provide, you had to provide that service. And I did that. And it was in the middle of that time that I began to see the error of my ways by listening to those same women who regretted their decision, just like Chloe was talking about. And there was more and more, because as abortion has become more prevalent, we begin to see the side effects and the damages. And as you accompany people, because in the end, really, most patients really want to be loved and cared for and provide real informed consent to make the best choices for health. And lo and behold, in our profession, the American College of OBGYN has become a political action committee. And abortion and this transgender ideology are pure political ideologies. And so for the last 35 years, we've been practicing great life-affirming care, and you can make a difference, and you can accompany women holistically, integratedly, restoring. We don't see their fertility as diseased or broken. You actually can come alongside and encourage and empower them. And this whole idea, this idea of telehealth, as the other doctor was saying about, these are class 3 drugs, for crying out loud. And yet they take off all the protections for telehealth on the abortion side. You see how you have to keep abortion protected, because the more it comes to the light, the more it becomes an abomination. And it becomes the problem that we all know that it is. And the wounds and the trauma are significant. And I just want to thank you for this incredible study, this undercover expose, and for the courage of Riley and Chloe and the rest, as well as it is now time to defund Planned Parenthood, period. We can't go back, never again, to allowing this brutality, because this brutality is absolutely not medicine.
Thank you, Dr. Bruchalski. Thank you so much for your courage and your voice and speaking out on this. Dr. Kathi Aultman, thank you so much for joining here today and for your courage. Why are you speaking out, Dr. Aultman? And why is this a particularly important moment for people of good conscience to speak out against the atrocities happening at Planned Parenthood?
Well, first off, I have to thank you for doing this. This whole trans thing has just, the treatment of children and women and men has just been killing me. And I'm so thankful that you've done this. And Chloe, you are so brave. And I've heard your story before, and I'm so thankful for you. I'm a retired OBGYN, over 35 years experience. I used to do first and second trimester abortions. Thankfully, after I had my child, I made that baby fetus connection, and I could no longer kill babies just because they weren't wanted. It took reading an article comparing abortion to the Holocaust for me to finally change my mind when I realized that I was a mass murderer, and that the Nazis could do what they did for the same reason I could do what I did. And that was, we did not see, just as I did not see the fetus as a human being, they did not see their victims as human beings. I also, in my practice, I saw young girls who had unplanned pregnancies and did really well. And then I was seeing women who were having abortions and then suffering the psychological and physical complications, having to see psychiatrists because of what they had done. I am just so thankful that this wasn't around when I was a kid, because I was a real tomboy. I didn't want to take home ec. I wanted to take wood shop and metal shop. I climbed trees. I did everything boys did. I didn't really want to be a boy. I just thought they had more fun. Same thing with my girls. And I'm so thankful that they weren't, caught up in this. But children are now, and they need to be protected. And Planned Parenthood is in this for the money. It's a cash cow. And we have got to defund them. We've got to protect our children. Not only are they killing them, not only are they hurting women. A new study coming out that the abortion pill is the risks are 22% higher than what we've been told, 10% risk. We've got to defund them, and then give that money to legitimate medical, people that are doing legitimate medical care, and people like, in communities, we have something called We Care and give free care to people that can't pay, pregnancy resource centers, places like that. I also have to say that this is a nightmare from a gynecologic standpoint. We can create a little pouch in a guy, we can create a neovagina. That doesn't mean they can have orgasms, and have pleasurable sex. We're taking away the ability to have sex from all these people. We can create what looks like maybe a sort of a penis, but that person's not going to be able to enjoy that organ. It's just a nightmare. Women who, girls that are going to be later infertile, they don't know at that young age whether they want a baby or not. My girls were in their late 30s before suddenly they thought, oh, I want to have a baby. I was 30 before I decided I wanted a child. I didn't really like babysitting. I didn't think I wanted kids. So, it's child abuse, it's woman abuse, it's male abuse, and it's got to stop, and our lawmakers have to make a stand.
Thank you so much, Dr. Aultman and Dr. Bruchalski. I'm so grateful for your voice and your courage and providing real health care to women and to children. It's so needed. All right, so we're going to close out here, but I have to ask you, Riley, and you, Chloe, one more question here. Riley, I'm going to start with you. This is a historic moment in not just the pro-life movement's history, but in American history, when we have the Congress, when we have the White House, it's held by Republicans who say they're pro-life, who want to stand for life, and yet we are currently still funding Planned Parenthood $800 million a year, and they have not been shut down for their criminal and abusive activities yet. And so I want to ask you, Riley, what your message is to Republican lawmakers, especially those that are right now wavering on whether or not they should defund Planned Parenthood, which is the biggest abortion chain, as well as this now lead provider of cross-sex hormones to young people. What is your message to those lawmakers who are wavering right now, Riley?
Well, look, what we saw on November 5th of 2024 was democracy in action. The American people spoke. Of course, the American people turned out to the polls to embrace Donald Trump, to embrace his cabinet picks, to embrace the America First agenda. But more so, and this has been proven with every different polling numbers, demographics that have now been brought to light, more so than turning out for Donald Trump, people turned out to the polls to reject the absurdity of the gender ideology movement, and of course, the corruption behind companies, organizations, industries like Planned Parenthood, right? The American people spoke. So what we're seeing from our elected members of Congress, I think the best approach to this is that of what Nick mentioned. We have to hold their feet to the fire. They would love nothing more, both sides of the aisle, truthfully. They would love nothing more than to get this done very sneakily, move behind closed doors, sweep everything under a rug. We cannot let them. We have to let them know we are watching, and we will continue to fight against anyone. It doesn't matter if you have an R by your name or not. We will fight against anyone who stands in the way of protecting, maintaining the innocence of children, safeguarding children, who stands in the way of parental rights, who stands in the way of women's rights. We will do whatever it takes. And again, I think the significance behind this call today, what you guys at Live Action are able to do, it is just everyday people. Again, it is up to us, every single one of us on this call who participated in these panels, every single person watching or listening, understand you have a circle of influence. You don't have to have 1 million followers on social media to have impact. Every single person has a circle of influence. Use it. Utilize it, whether it's having the conversation. It can be as simple as talking about this stuff with those around you. And what you will find in doing that, again, is that the majority of people are vehemently oppose what we're seeing done by Planned Parenthood, especially to minors and, of course, to the unborn. It's sickening, and to see how it's celebrated, how it's touted as this amazing thing. We saw it outside the DNC this past year. that was one of the most darkest revelations that I've had thus far. Having a on demand mobile child sacrifice clinic, if you will. Sickening stuff. It's up to us to expose it and to hold all of our leaders' feet to the fire.
Riley, thank you so much for your voice and for speaking out. Everybody I know is very inspired by your courage. Chloe, your courage is infectious. What is your message to Congress right now at this pivotal moment regarding Planned Parenthood?
We're at a point in time where I think we have almost just about everything that we need to move forward in this movement to protect our children from these radical transgender treatments, from the medical pipeline, and from the other forms of abuse that are being perpetrated against these gender confused children. We have, the HHS just released a systematic review of these treatments, of all the science around it. And the bottom line is that this is all junk science. There is no sound science that is backing these treatments for anybody who has gender dysphoria, but especially those children. But there are significant clinical and lifelong risks that are associated with it. And it couldn't be any clearer just what this is. It's a violation of children's basic fundamental human rights to be giving them these treatments, because you're disrupting their development. You're disrupting their pathway into a healthy, normal, happy, fulfilling adulthood. And I think that there's a lot of hope. We have a lot of hope. We have had a lot of progress in so many different ways. And we could be at the finish line very soon. But I want to give a stark warning. I don't like to say it, but the pro-life movement has unfortunately been a difficult one to advocate for. Issues like abortion and birth control have been very difficult for us to fight against, because the radical left has won that narrative for decades. The very same thing could happen with the issue of protecting our children from transgenderism. If we do not act now, if we do not continue full force, things could get worse. All of these laws could be repealed, and more children can go down this route. It's up to us to ensure the future of our country, to ensure the future of our children and their children, and the children that will come in the generations after theirs. We have a lot of work on our hands in the next 4 years. To every lawmaker, to everyone in Congress, I implore you to step up for what is right and to stop this from happening in our country for once and for all.
Thank you, Chloe. Thank you so much for sharing your story and for your courage. Thank you, Riley. We've had these amazing panelists on today's live national webcast calling for the truth to be made known about Planned Parenthood's operations harming children inside and outside of the womb, as well as calling for the defunding of Planned Parenthood. They should also be shut down. But right now, this is a special moment in time when we have the opportunity of a lifetime to stop the forced taxpayer funding of Planned Parenthood. I want to close with a call to action for everybody listening. And I thank you again to the thousands of people across the country who are tuned in right now, who care about protecting children, who care about the right to life of babies in the womb and the right to a childhood, and to the protection of their bodies and their identity of our young people. As you've heard today on this national live webcast, Planned Parenthood is the biggest abortion chain in the country. Their recent numbers show that they are now killing 400,000 babies in the womb every single year. You have also heard from Riley Gaines, from Chloe Cole and others, and from our brave investigative reporter, Savannah, about how Planned Parenthood is also giving cross-sex hormones to children as young as 16 years old without any mental health consultation, therapy, even telehealth appointments. These cross-sex hormones are life-altering and destructive. They can lead to a lifetime of regret, as well as permanent changes and the stunting of development of these young people. Planned Parenthood is profiting off of killing babies and ultimately sterilizing and harming the bodies of born children. And during all of this, they are receiving every single year, according to their own report, $800 million in taxpayer funding. And so the time is now. We have a pro-life majority in the House, in the Senate, enough of a majority to pass a spending bill. And we have a White House who has pledged that it will stand up for the protection of children outside of the womb, those that are affected by the transgender ideology, and who has agreed that Planned Parenthood funding should be stopped. And so we are calling, all people of good conscience and good faith are calling on Congress to act now, to ensure that any budget that hits the desk of President Trump does not include funding for the biggest abortion chain and promoter of cross-sex hormones to young people. And so I would urge everybody listening, there is a link in the description to contact Congress, to call your member of Congress, to urge them to defund Planned Parenthood. I'm also urging everybody listening to share the investigative report from Live Action with your friends, with your family, and with your community. People are not aware of Planned Parenthood's activities, and the polling proves that when people become aware of Planned Parenthood being the leading provider or one of the leading providers of cross-sex hormones to young people, support for Planned Parenthood plummets, it drops, but they need to be made aware of these facts. So share the video of Live Action's investigation exposing the trans agenda at Planned Parenthood with your friends and with your community. And finally, we encourage you to support Live Action and the pro-life movement in our efforts to defend life and to protect our children. Our children are the future. They are what we all should fight for and should stand for. And I want to thank again our incredible panelists for their courage in speaking out and for their vision. And I want to thank all of you for your vision, for your courage, and for your love in speaking out for our most vulnerable children inside and outside of the womb. Thank you again for joining this incredibly important live broadcast from Live Action. I'm Lila Rose, and we will see you all again soon. God bless you all.